So coming up on Tuesday is going to be the final week of the 2025 Contender Series, and I will admit the finale has really come at a great time for me because you guys know what time it is. It is exam time for me over the next few weeks. I will be preparing and attending my final year exams for my second to last year in my civil engineering degree. And then after this year, I will be able to start specializing into something that I am quite excited about. So, anyways, with that out the way, week number 10, here it is, 6 fights on the card. It's a really good card as well. I actually do believe there is a fight on this card that truly has the potential for a fighter who loses to get signed on the card. So I will mention that when it does occur on this breakdown, because I think that this card could have some very fun fights, and I think that Dana White could be in a very happy mood. Now, I will admit this is probably going to be a bit of a faster breakdown than what I have done in the past. I am recording this nearly at midnight for me. I do need to get up relatively early tomorrow if I'm going to be able to get up and go to the gym and then study and stuff like that. And also, I do have a bit of a headache. Now, I think it might have been because I spent all of the weekend outdoors and my bald head may have gotten sunburnt. I don't know. This is a first time experience for me. I'll let you guys know with an update later on in the week with UFC Canada. Now, first fight of the night, we've got Mario Mingaj as he does take on Wes Schultz. I do think that Wes Schultz is going to win this one. And this is a pretty odd fight. I mean, Mario Mingaj is probably relatively happy that he's fighting a wrestler because he is a guy that does want to use his BJJ, especially off of his back. He does have a lot of triangle choke wins in his career. He's got a rear naked choke in there as well, but for the most part, this guy's takedown defenses, it doesn't exist. It's absolutely terrible, but it's because he wants the fight to get down to the ground, and from there he can get his BJJ going. Now, I just don't think that Wes Schultz is going to get caught in one of these submissions from Mingaj. Now, that could be a take that ages poorly, but that is just the way the Contender Series does roll. Wes Schultz on the feet, I don't think he's great. He can be pretty slow out there, but I do think once he gets his takedowns, and he will get his takedowns because he is the better wrestler in this matchup, and he shoots for wrestlers for takedowns very regularly. I think he's going to be able to avoid the subs, and he should be fine. He didn't look too bad against Mansur Abdul Malik on very short notice in that matchup. He did eventually, of course, get out grappled a little bit and ground and pounded out, but he was holding his own in the wrestling there. I think he does go out there and he beats Mingaj. I forgot to mention as well on the We Want Picks channel, I did do a collaborative video with Bitsam on this card. And I think it's pretty funny. I mean, Bitsam had some hot takes. He picked a lot of dogs. And should be a pretty fun video to watch on the We Want Picks channel. Now, Azamat Nuftilaev takes on Jovan Leka, or maybe it's Jovan Leka. My opinion on this fight, right? They signed Brando Pericic and Alicia Allison directly to the UFC. Both of those guys had records that were like 4-1, 5-0. You have Nuftilaev here, who was 17-1 and a 23-year-old heavyweight with a 10-2 record, and you didn't sign both of these guys straight up to just make their debut at some Apex card in a few weeks' time? Like, what are we doing here, man? Like, seriously, they've been signing 6-0 guys everywhere. You've got a 17-1 heavyweight, 17-1, 32 years old. He's not even an old heavyweight, and a 23-year-old heavyweight prospect, and you're just ignoring them, and you're just signing these absolute bums to feed to Josh Hokett, the next Colby Covington. Like, what are we doing, man? But anyways, Azamat Nutulaev, he's pretty good. He's got a lot of experience, obviously, and I think that is going to be relatively important here. He did kind of can crush a lot, but recently he has been fighting decent enough competition, except for this guy, Albayev, who might be the single fattest fighter I've ever seen in my entire life. But, you know, he did beat Edevan Santos, who was 15-4 at the time, and, you know, a couple of guys with winning records since his loss to Slim Trabalsi. In the past, he has struggled with cardio issues. I do think that that's something that still is relevant to this day. But I do think that he should have a pretty significant grappling edge over Jovan Leka. Now, his striking is decent, but it's not fantastic in my opinion. And Leka probably will be the better striker in this matchup. But also at the same time, I wasn't all of that impressed by Jovan Leka's striking either. You know, he's a very, very athletic fighter though. And to be fair, to his credit, he does throw kicks very quickly for a big boy that's 6'5" with a bit of size on him. He was quite athletic, and maybe that is where he is going to excel, just maybe even being the faster guy in this matchup. But I will say, I just am not fully convinced he's going to be able to deal with the wrestling and grappling that Nuftilaev is going to offer here. And Leka also doesn't mind clinching, so he's probably not going to be too afraid of Nuftilaev if he does close the distance. But I think that Nuftilaev is going to get a submission here. He is minus 123. Very close odds on this fight. And now Michael Oliveira fights against Victor Valenzuela. I like Oliveira. I've been a fan of his for a while. I think that he's a very good prospect, and I would be surprised if he lost this one. Now, the thing is, though, he needs to avoid a brawl, because Victor Valenzuela will draw you into a brawl, and then he'll try his best to knock you out. He put this guy here, Bruce Whitehead, to sleep. Like, he knocked him out, and Bruce Whitehead was laying down with his hands like this on the ground. And I was like, oh my god, he literally put him to sleep. It was nap time for Bruce Whitehead. And in that matchup, Bruce Whitehead actually caught him early, and then they just started standing and banging. Valenzuela started getting the better of the exchanges, and within 90 seconds, he did knock him out. But there was a lot that went on in that 90 seconds. I recommend you watch the fight. It's actually on YouTube, on the UFC Fight Pass website, on the YouTube channel. I think it's a really good fight. I think it's fun to watch. And then aside from that, a lot of knockout wins in the first, second round. And I do think against Michael Oliveira, he's going to be the more aggressive fighter. Now, I say that given the fact that Michael Oliveira has a lot of first round knockouts, but recently he has been fighting a lot more patiently. I would say probably fighting a lot more intelligently, and he has been taking a much longer period of time to find the finishes. Now, against Aldo Pereira, this guy was running away from them for a pretty decent period of time in that matchup, but still probably is a guy you would expect him to get finished. But Oliveira, he does have pretty good striking. I think his boxing technique's pretty solid. I think that he's a pretty big guy for the weight class as well, compared to Valenzuela, who's listed at 5'9" here. Very intrigued to maybe see the weigh-ins, but I think that Oliveira, just in general, is going to be the better striker, like more technical, more defensively sound. And I think as long as he just doesn't get drawn into an absolute brawl, I think he should be okay to avoid the big shots of Valenzuela and get a knockout on his own. He is a minus 210 favorite. He was minus 250, I do believe, at one point. So it looks like money might be going in on the Valenzuela side. But I do think that Oliveira is the pick for this matchup. Now, Marwan Rahiki takes on Ananias Mulamba, and I do think that Rahiki wins this one. I think that Rahiki wins this one by knockout. I've been very impressed by him over the last year or so. I haven't been too familiar with Rahiki over until recently, I will admit, but he is a guy that has impressed me a lot. He seems like he's in his early 20s. I don't think that he has been in MMA for too long in general. You know, made his amateur career debut in 2023, made his professional debut in 2024. And when I did see the news that he was on the Contender Series, I did think to myself that maybe it was going to be a little bit too much too soon, just given the fact that he is young, and maybe just me kind of having that local-ish bias. I know he's from Australia, but, you know, kind of thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind seeing him fight a couple more times on that Australian regional scene before he gets the call. But I do think he's good enough, and I do think he is good enough to beat Mulamba. Rahiki uses his length quite well. He is going to be taller in this fight. I think he's also going to have a pretty big reach advantage if my eyes don't deceive me. And I also do think he's going to hit harder in the striking. He's got some knockout wins, but he's also got some submission wins. I really liked the striking that he did display in his most recent fight. I think that's what he looked really exceptional in, especially from range. And then against Mulamba, I think Mulumba's going to be a bit smaller. Now, Mulamba, I've got a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for him, because if you guys don't know, I did watch the African Knockout show on Netflix as it was coming out, and this was like the Ultimate Fighter for fighters from, here we go, you can see it. It's a tournament, right, for fighters that are from Africa, and kind of the point of the show was to develop fighters in Africa using this TV show, African Knockout. It was pretty fun. And it was a pretty fun show in general. It was on Netflix, probably still is on Netflix as well. And that's where he got his career. Now, the thing is, though, to win that show, what you got, if you did win, was a Brave contract. It was like a UFC contract, but for Brave, right? And the problem is, he won the show, and then he fought for Brave and got submitted early, and then went back to Africa to fight for African Knockout again. So it kind of did show that maybe he just isn't quite ready for a big step up in competition. But if you do watch his fights, he does hit pretty hard. I just don't think his striking technique is as good as Rahiki's. And the thing about his grappling is you will see a lot of wins, whether it is by ground and pound with full mount or with submissions. The thing about AKO and why it was kind of important that I did watch this show is a lot of the guys on the show are learning Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for the first time. So, in my mind, that really kind of just showed me that a lot of these guys just aren't quite so good in the grappling in this area of the world here. It's just still a developing MMA sort of scene. So, I think that Mulamba just kind of is the best grappler out of a nation of people that just don't quite have that fully developed grappling yet. And I think that's how he's getting those submission wins. So I do think that Marwan Rahiki should be able to go out there and avoid the submission from Mulamba and then get the knockout as well after that. I think with Mulamba, definitely could be a guy which you bring back next season if he does come up against Rahiki and make it pretty close, because I do think that Rahiki still does lack a bit of experience maybe. But I would like to see a lot more fighters from Africa in the UFC, a lot more on the Dana White's Contender Series. I just think in this particular matchup, Rahiki should be able to win the fight. And we can move on to the next fight, which is a banger. This is a fight which I think the winner and the loser could also get signed. I thought this fight was at 145 pounds. It's at 135, and that tells me that Kwon is going to have a massive size advantage in this weight class. This guy, you know, he did fight for one championship, and I think that Kwon's career probably is a perfect example of why the rehydration course just doesn't work. I know people in my comment sections try to tell me this. It doesn't work. It's just nonsense. It's bullshit. You know, it's been proven wrong so many times. I mean, I've watched one championship events where fighters have decided to not even show up to the weigh-ins and they still fight anyway. I've watched one championship events where the fighters have just failed the hydration clause. They still fight anyway. I've seen fighters which have weighed in, not even submitted the hydration clause. They still fight anyway. The one championship, the weigh-in system, it's a joke. They don't even stick to their own nonsense that they've come up with. And I think that Kwon's career is a perfect example of that, because he fought Mark Abelardo, who was like a flyweight in there compared to him, completely different fighter. Then he fought Artem Balak in the same weight class only a few months later, and this Balak guy was massive. He looked like a welterweight compared to Kwon. So, like, your own bullshit doesn't even work. Balak was like 3 times the size of Abelardo. It's just ridiculous to me. But anyway, with that one championship rant over, and also I don't cover one anymore because that's not an MMA promotion in my opinion. But he's really good, man. Like, the losses to Fabricio de Andrade kind of do suck because they are in the first minute in the first round. But if you do kind of look past those, his career has been pretty successful. He was the number 4 ranked guy in one championship for a very long time. He defended that number 4 ranking against Abelardo, fought the number 5 ranked guy Artem Balak here, fought another guy here and Zolchijig, and he's knocked them all out, man. And this guy's striking is legit. It looks like he's got some sort of Muay Thai background because he's always throwing volume, he's always throwing kicks, he's always throwing strikes from range. The thing about Kwon, though, is the striking defense does leave a bit to be desired. He's got that tall man's defense, man, where literally he just kind of, like, when he exits the pocket, he just leans back and his hands can drop a bit, and his fight against Abelardo did show that to me. Abelardo was catching him a lot. Balak just wasn't a good enough striker to capitalize on it. But Diaz might be, just because he's going to be pressuring forward. Another thing about Kwon is, you know, I know he did get submitted by Imanari himself and Shoko Sato, who are really, really good legitimate grapplers, obviously. Some of the OGs of grappling in MMA, but that still does show that he does have a little bit of a concern, whether in the grappling department maybe, but his takedown defense recently has shown up and looked good, and I think it's going to be good enough to keep the fight on the feet against Juan Diaz. Now, Juan Diaz is fun, man. He's a guy that's 14-1. He's been a guy that I've been calling to get signed up to the Contender Series, I think, maybe since 2023, when I was making those videos on my channel, where I was like, these fighters need to be on the Contender Series. Juan Diaz was a guy that always showed up. And honestly, I think he's really good. The thing about me, though, when I watched him back, was he does lack that one-punch knockout power that you really want to see in a prospect. You know, he just kind of is a guy that I think when the times gets tougher, maybe he's down 1 round, maybe down 2 rounds, I don't know if you can rely on Diaz to get that one-punch knockout in the second or the third round. He really is just a guy that does be very aggressive. He's got all of the tools, I think, maybe except for that pure power to get knockouts because he is aggressive. He does throw in combinations, and you guys know I love my boxing combinations, but, you know, and he also does shoot takedowns. He does try and wear on his opponents, but I just haven't really seen his ability to get that knockout. You know, he just does go out there and throws out a lot of volume, but it doesn't seem to connect enough to get the big finish. And I do think that Kwon is the better striker out of these two guys here. I think that he's going to be able to keep the fight at range. I think it's going to be an absolute banger. And I think that win or lose, both guys could potentially get signed if Dana White is in a good mood. I think this is going to be a great fight. I'm picking Kwon to win it. And he is actually a slight favorite. He opened as the dog. He's not the dog anymore. So if I recorded my video yesterday, I would have had an underdog pick, but that is life. And another situation in which I would have had an underdog pick is, once again, if I recorded my video yesterday, I would have been picking Levi Rodrigues as the dog, but he has been bet to the favorite, and he's now minus 140. And seems like people are just trying to fade Vidal. Now, I'm just going to say it, guys. I don't think that you really should just be going out there trying to fade Vidal because this is a pretty good matchup for him to win. But with that being said, I am still picking Levi Rodrigues. Vidal, of course, did fight on the Contender Series against Franco. And if you want my honest opinion, and this might sound harsh, I don't think it makes sense that they're bringing Vidal back for a second time. You know, I really don't think it does. He missed weight by, what, 4 pounds officially. I know he took the fight on short notice, but Felipe Franco, like, he wasn't very good. I know he had an 8-0 record, and I even said it in my breakdown, I don't think this guy's going to be any good. There's no tape on him. The fight was terrible, one of the worst fights of the season. He just happened to get a big submission in the third round, and here he is, he's back. So I guess maybe just they love it when you do a favor for them because Schultz, of course, also did them a favor last year and he's getting another opportunity as well. Vidal wants to take you down and he wants to ground and pound you out. Now, if he can get the takedown on Levi Rodrigues, I have no idea what Levi Rodrigues looks like on his back. But the thing is, I do believe that to beat Freddy Vidal, you need to be able to defend takedowns and or really put him in trouble on the feet. And I do believe that Rodrigues has the power to put Vidal in trouble on the feet. The problem is I didn't really see him fight any wrestlers. I don't know if this guy's takedown defense is good enough, but I do think his striking is good enough to knock out Freddy Vidal. I just wasn't that impressed with him on the Felipe Franco fight. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't really have a very high opinion on either of these two guys, but I'm going to go with the guy that I think has the better finishing chance. So let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Freddy Vidal probably is the best underdog on the card, if I'm being honest with you guys. But let me know if you think there's another good dog to be picking on this card. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.